Welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm Matt.
And I'm Betty.
And we're so glad you're joining us for episode 2 of our Money series.
Yeah, great to be back.
Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey. We're going back in time to explore something we all use every single day. Money.
Right, you use it for your coffee, bills, saving up, but you probably don't think much about where it actually, came from.
Exactly. Have you ever stopped to really think about the origins of this thing that's so central to our lives?
Well, that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going to try and uncover the incredible evolution of money.
From the very earliest forms, which are pretty surprising.
All the way to the digital stuff, the cryptocurrencies we hear about today. We've looked at some great research mapping out this whole historical adventure.
Yeah, and our mission, really, is to distill the key insights. Those surprising facts, the aha moments.
So you can walk away feeling hopefully pretty well informed about the history of something so fundamental.
Okay, so let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
What the research shows, it's clear money wasn't just invented overnight, like in a flash of brilliance.
No, not at all. It seems it was a really gradual process, something born out of, pure necessity.
Right. Initially, people just relied on bartering. Trading goods and services directly.
Swapping this for that.
But, can you even imagine how inefficient that must have been?
Oh, massively.
Like trying to trade your basket of apples for, say, a new pair of shoes.
But the shoemaker just doesn't need any apples that day.
Exactly. You're stuck with apples. So that sheer inefficiency, that's really what sparked the creation of what we now call commodity money.
It makes sense, though pinpointing the exact moment that shift happened is tricky.
Yeah, we're talking way before written records here.
But we've got enough evidence, enough clues to paint a pretty vivid picture of how it likely unfolded.
Okay, so if bartering was such a pain, what did people actually use instead?
Well, society started using commodity money, which sounds a bit formal, but it's just everyday items.
Items that everyone agreed had some kind of inherent value.
Exactly. Things like cattle, certain kinds of beads, tea leaves, even teeth in some cultures. Feathers, too.
Wow. Teeth and feathers. It sounds completely wild to us now, doesn't it?
It does, but back then it was a huge step up from just trying to swap random things. A massive improvement.
It's interesting how nature often provided those early solutions.
Totally. Like cowrie shells. They were used as currency from about 1200 BC.
And there was a real logic to it, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, surprisingly logical. First off, they were incredibly durable. Unlike, say, tea leaves that could rot.
Good point.
They were small, so easy to carry around or hide if you needed to.
Practical.
And crucially, they were pretty uniform in size and shape. That made them really useful for measuring value, comparing quantities.
Ah, so you could count them easily.
Right. And even though they mostly came from the Indian and Pacific Oceans, evidence suggests they were accepted even in parts of Europe.
That's amazing. Definitely better than lugging a cow around to trade.
Definitely not durable or small, a cow.
No kidding. Imagine trying to make change for a cow. Our sources mention other really unique examples, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like whale's teeth being used in Fiji. That's pretty exotic.
Wow.
But then you get the rice stones on the island of Yap in Micronesia.
Ah, yes, the stone money.
These things were massive. Huge circular stones, some weighing several tons.
Several tons. How on earth did they trade those?
I have no idea. I'm just picturing trying to deposit one at the bank. Yes, this multi-ton stone, please.
It really makes you appreciate, pocket change. Convenience.
Absolutely. And that convenience or lack of it raises a big question.
How did they manage these bulky commodities like grain or, giant stones?
Exactly.
Well, this links into the beginnings of banking. A basic form actually emerged way back in ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq.
Really? Banking that early?
Yeah, royal palaces and temples often acted as secure warehouses, places to store grain and other valuable stuff.
Okay, like a safe deposit box?
Kind of, and here's the clever bit. They kept written records, receipts, basically, detailing who owned what and how much.
Ah, I see where this is going.
These written records, these receipts, started to be used instead of physically moving the grain or whatever it was.
This is like an early IOU note. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. It's like an early ledger system, long before computers, obviously.
Our sources note similar things happening elsewhere too, right? Ancient Egypt, China, Babylon, India.
That's right. The ideas seem to pop up in various places. They used clay tokens, for instance, in commodity warehouses.
Tokens representing the goods stored inside.
Yep. And these tokens were traded in markets instead of the actual physical goods. They were even given to workers as payment sometimes.
So this really was the beginning of the banking system as we know it, moving from the physical thing to a representation of its value.
It's a fundamental shift, a really foundational moment in economic history, moving beyond the purely physical.
So from shells and clay tokens, we eventually land on something much more familiar, metal money.
Right. Metals started being used maybe as early as 2000 BC in Babylon, but they really took off, became widespread around 1000 BC during the Iron Age.
So metals were around as money for a good 1,000 years before proper coins appeared.
Yeah, roughly. And you can see why metals were attractive.
They had a lot going for them.
Definitely. They were hard-wearing, durable, they lasted.
Unlike feathers or tea.
Exactly. They were relatively scarce, which gave them value, often shiny, appealing, harder to fake than, say, a shell.
Right. And crucial, too, they were divisible. You could break them down into smaller amounts.
Without losing their basic value, yeah. Initially, it was often about weight lumps of gold or silver.
But then came the big innovation.
The first regulated coins. Standardized pieces.
Game changer. Our sources point to Lydia, which is modern-day Turkey, around 640-630 BC.
That's the period, yeah. Gold and silver alloys mixtures of metals.
And there are these sort of bean-shaped coins, stamped with the lion symbol.
That's the description. And historians generally agree these are among the very first regulated coins.
And the Romans, they had their own journey with metal money, too.
Oh, yes. They went from using rough bronze chunks, more like tools,
To these huge, pre-weighed 5-pound bronze bars.
can you imagine carrying those? Then, thankfully, to lighter bronze coins for everyday stuff.
And they used gold, silver, brass, too. Apparently, one gold coin was worth something like 1,600 bronze coins.
Quite a difference in value. And from there, metal coins really spread globally. They evolved into what we still use today.
Even though our modern coins are made of much cheaper metals now.
They still keep that ancient look, don't they? That round shape, the stamping.
There's a fascinating little detail about coin design, though.
Ooh.
From the 18th century. You know the ridges or grooves on the edge of coins?
Yeah, like on a quarter or a 10-pence piece.
They weren't just for decoration. Apparently, they were added to stop coin cutting.
Coin clipping, what's that?
It was a crime. People would shave off tiny amounts of the precious metal gold or silver from the edges of coins.
Ah, and over time they'd collect enough shavings to be valuable.
Exactly. But with the ridges, it was obvious if someone had tampered with the edge.
Clever, a tiny detail, but it shows that constant battle between creating money and preventing fraud. It's always been there.
Okay, so we've got commodities, then the much more practical metal coins. What comes next? Seems like we need something even lighter, more portable.
You're heading in the right direction. Paper money. But it took a surprisingly long time to appear.
How long are we talking?
About 1,600 years after those first regulated coins in Lydia. Paper money seems to have surfaced around 1000 AD in China.
Wow, fives in AD China. During Emperor Xinzong's reign, the sources say.
That's right. And again, it was a really brilliant innovation, probably driven by necessity. Carrying lots of coins was cumbersome.
So how did paper money even work back then? It seems like such a leap.
Well, Chinese bankers, or perhaps merchants acting like bankers, would securely store people's metal coins for them.
Okay, keep them safe.
And in return, they'd issue paper receipts. These were called jiaozi.
Jiaozi.
People could then use these paper jiaozi as payment. Or they could take them back to the banker and redeem them for their actual coins.
So the paper represented the coins held somewhere else.
Exactly. The paper itself was likely made from mulberry tree bark, apparently, and they often had really intricate designs engraved on them.
To stop counterfeiting.
That was the idea, yeah. Counterfeiting was a worry even then. But there is a catch. These jiaozi were generally only for very high values, like representing a large number of coins.
So not something the average person would use for buying bread.
Probably not. More for big transactions between merchants, maybe.
Okay, interesting. So when did paper money become more common for everyday people?
We need to jump forward about 500 years to the 16th century in Europe.
Okay.
European goldsmiths started doing something very similar. They'd store gold coins for customers.
And issue paper receipts.
You got it. But crucially, these European receipts often had lower values than the Chinese jiaozi.
Making them more useful for everyday transactions.
Exactly. Much more widely used by ordinary people. And then things became more formal. The Bank of England issued its first paper money in 1694.
The same year it opened.
Right. And by the early 19th century, paper money was pretty common across the world.
But here's the really crucial shift, right? Unlike a gold coin, paper money itself isn't intrinsically valuable.
Absolutely critical point. It's not worth its weight in anything precious. It's essentially just a piece of paper.
It's a promise to pay the bearer a certain amount, like a promissory note.
Precisely. And this is what really ushers in the age of fiat money.
Fiat money. Sounds fancy. Nothing to do with the car, I assume.
No, nothing to do with the car. Fiat just means faith money, essentially, or let it be done by decree.
So it's currency that has no value in itself.
Correct. That 20-pound note in your wallet, the paper and ink, worth maybe pennies. Same for a 50-pound note, or even a 2-pound coin. The metal is worth far less than 2 pounds.
So where does the value come from?
It comes from a third party, usually the government or the central bank, guaranteeing its face value.
They basically say, this piece of paper is worth 20 pounds because we say it is, and we'll stand behind it.
Exactly. And they work to keep its value stable. It's all built on collective belief and trust in that issuing authority in the system.
And this system of trust, backed by governments, evolved over time, too. I'm thinking about the gold standard.
Right. That was a big phase. During the 19th century, many major countries, the UK, USA, Canada, France, Japan, adopted the gold standard.
Which meant?
It meant you could, theoretically at least, walk into a bank with your banknote, say a 10-pound note.
And walk out with 10 pounds worth of actual gold.
That was the principle, yes. Your paper money was directly convertible to a fixed amount of gold. It provided a tangible backing.
But that didn't last forever.
No, it didn't. The UK left the gold standard back in 1931. And the whole system was pretty much abandoned globally in the early 1970s when the U.S. stopped converting dollars to gold for other countries.
So that's when banknotes really became pure fiat money.
That's the key transition point. They went from being asset-backed promissory notes to being backed purely by faith in the government and the stability of the economy.
It's funny, though, UK banknotes still have that phrase, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of whatever pounds it is.
It is funny. Even though you absolutely cannot demand gold for it anymore and haven't been able to since 1931, it's like a little historical echo printed on the money.
A linguistic fossil.
Thinking about this bigger picture, fiat money exists as all these different currencies, right? Pounds, dollars, yen, euros.
And their values change against each other all the time, the exchange rate.
Which brings up a really practical question for you listening. Why should you actually care about these exchange rates? They sound a bit abstract.
Oh, but they hit you right in the wallet. It's not abstract at all when it affects your spending power.
Good point. Give us an example.
Well, think about the British pound. A few years back, it might have bought you, say, 1.5 euros or maybe 2 US dollars. But recently, it's weakened quite a bit. Now, it might only get you just over 1 euro or maybe $1.33.
So your pound doesn't stretch as far abroad.
Exactly. Your holiday suddenly gets way more expensive.
Right.
But it's not just travel. It makes imported goods pricier, too.
So things coming into the country cost more.
Right. That's why your monthly shop at the supermarket might have gone up noticeably. A weaker pound means it costs more to buy fruits, veggies, meat, whatever that comes from other countries.
So it impacts you directly, even if you never leave the country.
Definitely. It's a real-world effect. Okay, deep breaths. We've gone from shells to metal to paper promises backed by faith.
It's quite a journey already.
And now we're undeniably in the digital age. Which brings us to the newest chapter in this whole story, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
The latest evolution. And it's incredibly new, relatively speaking. Bitcoin only appeared in 2009.
Just over a decade ago. Then others followed, like Ethereum, Ripple, lots of them now.
And what's fascinating here is how different they are. These are digital currency systems, crucially, not created or issued by any traditional bank or government.
And therefore not regulated by them either.
Exactly. That's a key feature. Bitcoin, for example, isn't printed, it's mined.
Mined, like digging for gold.
Sort of, but digitally.
Yeah.
It involves incredibly powerful computers solving really complex mathematical problems, cryptographic codes.
Good.
And the miners, whose computers solve the puzzle first, get rewarded with new bitcoins.
So new bitcoins are created as a reward for computational work.
Pretty much. And every new bitcoin, plus every single transaction made, gets recorded on this public ledger called the blockchain.
Blockchain, that word gets thrown around a lot, so it's just a public list of records.
Essentially, yes. A distributed, transparent ledger. Now, mining sounds like way too much effort for most people, and it requires serious computing power.
Yeah, probably not doing that on my laptop.
Right. So the easier way for most people to get Bitcoin is just to buy it with regular money, with cash.
But you need stuff for that too, right? A digital wallet? A marketplace?
You do. You need a secure digital wallet to store it, and you need to use a reputable exchange or marketplace. And it has to be said, you need to be really careful about scams in this space.
Good warning. What else is unique about crypto, like Bitcoin?
Well, owners are generally anonymous, or pseudonymous at least. Transactions link buyers and sellers using encryption keys, not necessarily real names.
Like a secret code instead of a name tag?
Kind of, and its value. Just like stocks, it's driven by supply and demand.
Which means it can go up and down a lot.
Oh, significantly. Bitcoin's value has been all over the place, from basically $1 way back up to nearly $64,000 at one peak.
Wow. So some people have made fortunes.
And others, unfortunately, have lost millions. It's a very volatile new frontier in the world of assets and potential currencies.
What an absolutely incredible journey we've covered today. Seriously.
It really is amazing when you lay it all out.
From, simple cowrie shells and those enormous rice stones.
Through the cleverness of early banking with receipts and tokens.
To the durability of metal coins, then the huge leap to paper money based purely on faith.
And now, landing right in this digital frontier of cryptocurrencies.
It's just such a testament to human ingenuity, isn't it? And adaptation, our constant drive to find better, more efficient ways to trade value.
Absolutely. We've seen money evolve through so many forms, and each step seems driven by these core needs: efficiency, security, and maybe most importantly, trust.
Trust in the medium, trust in the system, trust in the issuer.
Exactly. And looking at this long history, this constant transformation, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
That's next.
Yeah. What do you think the next major evolution of money might look like? Will it become entirely digital, centrally controlled digital currencies? Or something totally different we can't even imagine yet?
How will our relationship with value itself keep changing? It's a fascinating question to ponder.
It really is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the history of money.
We hope you feel a bit more informed now.
And maybe, just maybe, a lot more curious about these invisible systems that shape so much of our world.
Until next time.
Keep exploring.